This is the Jerry Doyle Show.
I think there is an opportunity. I know they don't want me to say this, that we could wrap this thing up more quickly than we originally thought. Ron Paul stayed on for a long time. Huckabee stayed on for a long time in 2008. But frankly, when you all judge the race to be over, it almost is irrelevant as to whether they actually, quote, stay in the race or not.
There it is, the comments of Johnny McAmnesty. He says they probably don't want me to say it, but he feels very comfortable saying it, that in his mind, in the mind of the GOP establishment, it's over. Is it? Not even close, says our guest, Bruce Fein, Senior Policy Advisor to Ron Paul. Joining us on the program, Mr. Fein, welcome back.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Jerry.
I was watching this arrogant establishment SOB McCain last night. Those are my words, not yours. But and just feeling very smug and very confident that after 400,000 people in 2 states out of 50 with 309,600,000 people still in the country to have their say, he feels just very comfortable saying it's over.
Yeah, it would be like, I suppose, Japan in World War II after Pearl Harbor announcing victory, not waiting for the Battle of Midway or Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It is a condescension, it is a smugness and an arrogance that I think will turn voters against Mitt Romney and the likes of Mr. McCain, who think that they'll decide for the rest of the country. It's that kind of insularity from popular sovereignty that has put the country in peril that it's in, has created a disgust that has John McCain's branch of government command a 9%, I underscore 9% approval rating. That is not what's going to carry you over the top.
I was listening to Congressman Paul's comments last night where he was talking about how, you know, he likes the fact that the establishment considers him dangerous, and his comments about how they are dangerous to the status quo. And I said this earlier in the program, Mr. Fein, that this is a point where it's almost a call to arms for us to push back against this arrogance, against this establishment mentality, and take this all the way to a floor fight at the convention. How does something like that manifest itself?
Well, I mean, how do you oppose the establishment? Is simply by voting and contributing your time and resources against what basically is otherwise going to lead to a choice between Tweedledum and Tweedledee. I mean, the fact is that by saying the establishment fears Ron Paul, it means that you're exactly right. He's the only one that is running on a campaign of authentic change, discrediting big government being the center of our constitutional universe instead of individual liberty, celebrating the military-industrialism, terrorism, banking complex that manipulates government measures to benefit the few at the expense of the many. And to mean what he says when he says, I can cut $1 trillion off the budget. I don't need to wait over 50 years. It'll do tomorrow. And he doesn't have 3 agencies like Rick Perry can't remember to get rid of. He'd get rid of vastly more than that and get big government out of our lives, treasure the right to be left alone, encourage that kind of reliance and ambition and moxie that makes the country great. The country's great because of what individuals do, not what government orders them to do. And that's what's so unique about Ron Paul, understanding the underlying political culture that's got to change the country away from being empire and dependent and living off of borrowed money, borrowed time, into one that resembles the country the Founding Fathers created 210 years ago.
What I think Congressman Paul has and is gaining is the support of the people. And if you take a look at the registration of Republicans, Democrats, Independents, the independent numbers are certainly growing, 33% in the last 3 years, 40% of the country describing themselves as independent. But you need the push. You need the wind in the sails of the people. I think if Ronald Reagan had talked to Gorbachev in Reykjavik and, you know, basically just said, hey, tear down this wall, if it was just Ron talking to Gorby, I'm not exactly sure it would have had the same effect. Not to diminish Ronald Reagan in any way, but Gorby knew that the people of the United States were behind the words of the man. And I think what's important in going forward is that the voice of the people and the power of the people behind the voice of the man, Ron Paul, is what's needed to affect that kind of change and to push back against the institutional nature or the establishment nature of the entrenched status quo.
Well, I agree with you, and I think Ron's campaign is unique because it's not driven by egomania, but by ideas. And I think Ron would be the first one to say he's not the epitome of charisma. He's not Winston Churchill, but he attracts a following because the ideas are sound. And I think also the fact that he's most magnetic for the younger people shows that he is attacking the status quo, because it's just by the nature of the beast, Jerry, that the older you are, the more vested you are in what's gone in the past. Your status, your prestige, your sense of life's accomplishments, your money, it depends on what's been around for a long time. And if you're younger and you don't have anything that's already invested in the status quo, you're more open to ideas. That's a commentary on human nature and the way people try to resist changes that will undercut their own sense of self-importance and accomplishment. And that's what shows, in my judgment, that Ron is the ideas, the wave of the future, because he's getting people who aren't wedded to the legacies of the past, the military-industrial complex, permanent war, all times, all places, bailouts of banks, manipulating the Congress and statutes for the few at the expense of the many, making the government ever and ever bigger, invading our privacy, searching our homes, no due process, no probable cause, and making us vassals rather than strong, robust citizens. And to say that is why the mainstream, the establishment, it fears Ron Paul, and why youth does not, because youth doesn't fear change. It only understands and thrives on liberty and choice.
If you've ever been on a cruise, they have the midnight buffet, and they can lay out all the food, and it looks great, and it looks lavish. And if you're not hungry, it has a different effect than if you are. You can see all of this great stuff and just go, yeah, but I'm not hungry. I think the country is looking at this buffet of items that you just laid out. That's a part and parcel of the Ron Paul campaign, but they are hungry for that kind of change. I think the message maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago, wasn't resonating to the degree that it is today. When Ross Perot in 92, 39% of the electorate said it's not working. Now 81% of the electorate says it's not working. Congress had a higher approval rating, now the 9% number that you point out. I think the nation in general is hungry for a fundamental change, because it's been proven that what the status quo has given us, Democrat and Republican alike, isn't working, hasn't worked, and by assumption isn't going to work if we do it yet once again.
Yes, and it's not just, I don't think, Jerry, just that it's not working. It's not fair. It's not equitable. People are exploiting the sovereignty of we the people for their own inside-the-beltway purposes to enrich themselves at the expense of the many. I mean, Newt Gingrich, one candidate who illustrates that, $50,000-$60,000 a speech by promoting his connections, the American solutions, and all of the consulting for Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, the health industry, and all those sorts of things. That is exactly what the Founding Fathers despised. James Madison, father of the Constitution, President twice warned in the Federalist Papers, we do not want mutable, ever-changing, fluctuating laws because it'll enable the rich to what he called speculate on public measures and make money off of those who are less connected to the legislative body. That's why he wanted to erect as many checks as possible to prevent laws from being changed so those with the know, those with the political influence could prosper on the backs of those who are working. And what K Street is exactly what James Madison feared. K Street, for your audience, are the lobbyists in Washington, D.C. that make tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars a month doing nothing but trying to manipulate legislative policy to aid a particular special interest group. That's the antithesis of the United States of America that was born in the Constitution of 1787. It is exactly what was causing the rotten boroughs and the British Parliament to fall into disrepute, in which we separated ourselves from in 1776. But we have now come full circle, and we resemble the British of 1776 more than the United States of 1776.
We're talking with Bruce Fein, Senior Policy Advisor to Ron Paul, ronpaul2012.com, the website. You bring up 1776 yesterday, January 10th, 1776, was the release of Thomas Paine's Common Sense, who he issued anonymously, but later was given credit for. And he, at the time, was referred to as a radical, a revolutionary, someone that had ideas that were well outside the mainstream, but then went on to see that common sense read by 1 out of every 4 people in the 13 British colonies at the time. I would have to imagine today, if you published a book where 1 in 4 people in this country bought it and read it and embraced it, your publisher would be pretty happy.
Well, you're absolutely right. And it was Thomas Paine who said, in a republic, the law is king. The king is not law. And we've turned that on its head. The king is law here. We call the king the president of the United States. He asserts all the power. He can make recess appointments that are unconstitutional. He can use predator drones to kill us without any facts or law that's public and can be demonstrated. So he can detain us for life. He can spy on us without warrants. He can decide that he will keep secret from Congress what he's doing, so we have secret government rather than transparent government. The king has become law. And that is exactly what Thomas Paine said we are not doing in the United States. We're making the law king. And that's just a perfect example, Gary, of how far we have deviated from those fundamental principles that caused so many to risk that last full measure of devotion, Valley Forge, Cemetery Ridge, or otherwise, so we could make the individual the center of our constitutional universe, to make we the people sovereign rather than some omnipotent authority, whether we call them a king or now the president who happens to be in the Oval Office. My offices are only about 3 blocks from the White House. And my gosh, when the president now goes from the White House to some event in Washington and comes down with a cavalcade, it's not 1 or 2 cars. It looks like a Roman emperor. You've got 100 people, policemen on motorcycles, and then there are about 150 cars. All the streets are shut down for 15 to 20 minutes. Nothing moves. Well, the president comes, and then you've got the cameras in the background. I mean, this is not the United States of America that the founding fathers and their successors fought so hard and sacrificed so much to give us, where individuals and the citizen was the highest office of the land, and those who were in power were custodians. They were stewards of authority, not to lord us over the so-called citizens who then are reduced to vassals. And Ron Paul understands that. He doesn't want to go to the White House to aggrandize power. He wants to go to the White House to shrink the authority of the president, to shrink the size of government, so we have we the people reigning rather than a big brother in Washington, D.C.
Well stated. I appreciate your time. Bruce Fein, Senior Policy Advisor to Ron Paul. The website, ronpaul2012.com. And as Thomas Paine said, these are times that try men's souls. But if they're going to try to tell us that it's over, they've got another thing coming. Bruce Fein, thanks, sir. We'll do it again.
The Jerry Doyle Show.
One of the things Ron Paul talked about also last night in the aftermath of the election in New Hampshire, the primary in New Hampshire, was auditing the Fed. How would you like to be able to make $62 billion in profits, not use your own money, and have absolutely no risk? Because that's what the Fed did last year. I'll tell you about it when we get back.
Jerry Doyle.